Welcome to PlayChat Podcast.
I'm Emma.
And I'm Sam.
We are two friends from high school who met for coffee and somehow we ended up here.
We'll be talking about theater, movies, music, and so much more.
You're listening to PlayChat.
Ooh! Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Halloween special, episode
What is
4.
the Halloween sound effect? Christine, insert a Halloween sound effect.
Right here. Perfect. Thank you so much, Christine.
Welcome back to PlayChat, everybody. Let's introduce ourselves.
Hello.
Okay, well, I am Emma Cahoon. I am a second-year student in the Boston University School of Theater. I am a Taurus, which will be important for a couple minutes from now.
Love that.
And I am currently obsessed with pumpkin-flavored things. I am
Great.
always obsessed with makeup. And I am and I cannot live without my Netflix subscription.
Oh, absolutely.
Period.
Okay. First off, before I introduce myself, these questions always catch me by surprise. Like every week I forget about them. And then you say them and I'm like, I have to think of answers really fast. Okay.
I know.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Griffin. I am a third-year student at Columbia College, Chicago. Did you say your major, Em?
No, but I'm a
Anyway,
theater arts
it's
major, in case you were wondering.
In case you're wondering, I'm a musical theater major. I'm a Virgo. I am currently obsessed with New Girl. I am always obsessed with paninis, and I cannot live without my Goodreads account. I don't know if I answered that last week. I know we talked about Goodreads.
We talked about it, but that is a good answer.
If I did not have Goodreads, I would be lost in the world of reading. So I love my Goodreads account.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Halloween special.
Yes.
And
on the Halloween special today, we have a special guest.
Special guest.
Everyone say hello to Moise.
Hi.
Hey, Moise, why don't you introduce yourself for the Play Chatters?
Of course. Hi, everybody. My name is Moise Tamas. I'm a playwriting major, third year, at Columbia College, Chicago. I'm an Aquarius. And the three things, something that I'm currently obsessed with, robots, actually. And thinking about robots a lot.
Love that.
Something that I'm always obsessed with is my grandma's little dog, Rosa. She's a little menace, but she's so adorable. And she loves me, so I can't say no.
Love Rosa.
And what was the last one? I'm sorry.
Something you can't live without.
Oh, something I can't live without. Honestly, at this point, like my computer. I do so much on my computer. Like I'm like mashing out plays all day long. And like also I play a bunch of video games, so that's probably
absolutely
the reason.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
Period. Welcome to PlayChat.
Thank you for having me.
PlayChat, Moise.
We're so excited to have you.
Fun fact about Moise. Moise was the first person I talked to, other than like Emma and my family, that had actually listened to PlayChat. We were like at a party.
Super fan alert.
We were at a party on a balcony, and everyone was like, "Wait, Sam, you have a podcast?" And Moise was like, "I've listened to it," and I could not handle it.
Moise was like, "Wee woo, super fan."
Well, I mean, I had to listen to the premiere, and then it just
iconic.
And I had to listen to the second one, and then I started listening to the third one.
Love
it just like it happens like that.
Iconic.
And honestly, you're the only podcast I listen to. If that makes you feel special.
That makes me feel so special.
Badge of honor.
My
That's
God.
Iconic.
All right, everyone. It's our Halloween episode. We're going to be talking about spooky things. Emma, take it away.
Before we get into our individual segments, we need to do our icebreaker question.
Oh, absolutely.
This week's icebreaker question to the theme is what is your favorite or maybe like favorite or best executed Halloween costume you've ever worn? I will go first if nobody else has an answer.
I genuinely, I
absolutely have an
about
answer.
this question. I'm thinking about it for the first time just now. So.
In I believe 5th grade, I was Luna Lovegood for Halloween, and
Very cool.
oh my God, I will need to find a picture, but I my mom and I went we went thrifting, I think, and got this it was this blue tank top that was it was long tank top that had it was layered and had rhinestones on it and was giving Luna, and I wore it all the time after Halloween, and I wore gray leggings. But then the reason that this was my most well executed Halloween costume is because I handmade an entire issue of the Quibbler
No,
to
you
carry
didn't.
around with me for my Halloween costume, and also her glasses, her her glasses that help her see the questions or whatever. So I literally handmade everything at the ripe age of 10 years old on my little hands and knees with glue and crayons, made this entire costume. So it was iconic.
I love
And that's
that.
my answer.
Mine's kind of in the opposite direction. Mine was so poorly executed, but I think it's hilarious.
Great.
And it's actually, by now, the picture of it will be posted on our Instagram. But when I was I must have been 9 or something like that. So around the same age, 4th grade, 5th grade, I wanted to be 2 things for Halloween. I wanted to be a Wildcats cheerleader, like a cheerleader from High School Musical. And I also wanted to be a cowgirl. So there is this picture of me, and I don't remember if this is what I actually wore on Halloween or not, but the picture is my favorite thing. There's this picture of me that exists where I'm wearing this white and red little cheerleading tank top and skirt, but then I also have cowboy boots on with a hat, and then there's a little fake gun holster with a little fake pellet gun. And I'm wearing them both at the same time. And I think it's hilarious because it makes absolutely no sense. And my mom posted it on her Facebook and was Sam had to try the pieces on all together. And people commented on it and were she looks so cute. So that must be my favorite Halloween costume.
I'm so glad that I am in possession of that image of you now for the rest of my life. I will be wielding it.
Moise, how about you?
I've had some very kooky Halloween costumes. I think my favorite, and the one that I think got the most laughs, was when I dressed up as Yoshi. From
You
Super
dressed up
Mario.
as Yoshi?
Yeah, it came with a hat with his eyes on it and his big nose, but the hat was too big, so it'd fall on my face.
Oh.
But the funny thing is that I had vocal jazz morning of Halloween, so it was up at 5:30, get to school at 6. And so I was just depressed Yoshi for the entire day. And people were looking at me and wow, you look awful. And I'm yeah, that's how I feel right now.
True.
But yeah, that was probably the best one.
Yoshi. I love
that's
that.
Iconic. All right. Well, that's the icebreaker question. Make sure that you go over to our socials and comment your best Halloween costume.
Absolutely.
And now we'll get into our segments. Who's gonna go first?
I can go first. So for my segment, my top voted thing was, I believe, I'm double checking right now because I'm not totally sure. I think it was I got to pick.
Yeah, it was Sam's choice.
I think it was Sam's choice. Yeah.
Go wild.
Let's
literally
so
go wild.
For my Sam's choice today, this is actually a conversation I've been having with friends in my real life, so I needed to bring it to the pod.
Okay, sure.
I've been having very heated discussions about one of my favorite Halloween specials of all time.
Sure.
The Charlie Brown Halloween. Because people
are
have
we
very
talking,
strong opinions about it.
Hold on. Are we talking Great
yes.
Pumpkin?
So
okay.
it's the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown. That's the name of the Halloween special. I have been getting very, very controversial opinions about the Halloween special.
What is there? What?
Yeah.
What is there to say?
Apparently, a lot of people think it's boring. And
well, that's just ridiculous.
I know, right? Okay, so here's my thing with the Charlie Brown movies.
Sure.
I have always loved the Charlie Brown specials. My dad's name is Charlie, and he's bald, so he will always get Charlie Brown jokes.
Wait, this is literally the perfect moment to shout out another PlayChat super fan, Charlie.
Your friend, Charlie.
Charlie Berger, if you're listening to this, literally shout out.
Shout
Thinking
out
of you,
Berger.
hoping that you are not afraid of Willy Wonka today.
Do I even want to ask, or should I just
keep going?
Is that a threat? Oh my god. So anyway, I've always been a big fan of the Charlie Browns, and my I think my dad used to like read them and like read the comics in the newspaper when they were still just comics. So I've always loved the Charlie Brown movies. And I remember growing up, I would always be so surprised when I had friends who hadn't seen them. And I was like, what do you mean you haven't seen the Charlie Brown specials? Because they were such an integral part of my childhood. So now as an adult, those movies are still some of my favorite things. And I watch them for almost every holiday. And it blows my mind that there are people that do not like the Charlie Brown Halloween special. Because in my opinion, it is the best Charlie Brown special. That might be controversial, but I think it's the best one.
I maybe agree that it's the best Charlie Brown special, but let me add to the discourse. Let me add a Reddit thread here.
Go for it.
This is interesting to me because this will kind of like play in a way to our later conversation in our main topic, but like every family has like passed down like folklore. You know what I mean? Like every family has their like quintessential like holiday classics or like stories that they always tell when they all gather together, or like whatever it is that they like have in common. And then like we carry with that like a nostalgia. And so I honestly understand why people who don't have the nostalgic connection to It's a Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown would find it boring. Like, because here's an example. My family every year, and like I am passionate about this, but my family watches Christmas Eve on Sesame Street every year. And like we have done that for my entire life. They did that for my aunt's entire life. They did that for my mom's entire life. Like, wow. And now we're doing it like every Christmas Eve that we are with my little cousins. We watch Christmas Eve on Sesame Street. We have it like we've gone through multiple DVDs of it
because you watch
like,
it so often.
Because we watch it like so. But like when I tell people that, they think it's ridiculous. They're like, Christmas Eve on Sesame Street, that sounds like the stupidest thing in the world. No, it's the best Christmas movie ever. You just don't get it. But there's like the nostalgia.
I have never seen Christmas Eve on Sesame Street.
And I wouldn't expect you to. It's just like family folklore. But It's a Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown is like more of a classic to this holiday season. So like I would expect that more people would have that nostalgic connection with it, but
I guess another part for me is that I like scary movies, I like horror movies and all that stuff, but I don't necessarily think scary movies are Halloween movies just because they're scary. I feel like there has to be a Halloween element. So a lot of my favorite Halloween movies actually have to do with Halloween as a holiday,
like it is Halloween.
Exactly. So Halloween Town, Great
Hocus
Pumpkin
Pocus.
Charlie Brown, and all of them tend to be kids or like nostalgic movies for me. With the one exception being, and this one isn't Halloween, it's Dia de los Muertos, but Coco, because that one's newer.
Oh my God, don't talk about Coco. It's gonna make me cry.
Please.
I cry every single time I
do
watch
too,
Coco.
Moisa. It's okay.
Without fail.
I also cry every single time I watch Coco.
It's so good.
All of my favorite Halloween movies are ones that I saw when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because there's something like comfortable about them. Like I know them, I know how they end, I know the characters, and that's why I love them so much. But I just could not, I don't know, I can't wrap my head around the idea of people not liking
finding it boring.
The It's a Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown. Because I do think there are some Charlie Brown specials that are not that entertaining. I will say it.
Yeah. Also some that are now like problematic. Not to throw Mr. Charlie under the bus, but maybe we need to talk about this.
Bad.
Maybe we need to listen. We have a platform. Maybe it's time we use it.
Maybe it's time we
talk about Charlie Brown needs to be stopped.
Talk about the Charlie Brown discourse.
Literally, we need to silence him on some occasions.
On some occasions. I will say, with the Thanksgiving episode, there's like half the episode where they're like pilgrims, and that half. Bad, problematic. I don't want it. But then the other half is when they're just having a little friendsgiving and like Snoopy's filling out like toast, and like Peppermint Patty wants to come over and she's like a crush on Charlie Brown, and I love that half of the episode.
The lore.
But
literally so much lore. No, I am obsessed. I love the Peanuts, especially this time of year. For some reason, like you can ask anybody that I live with. I have so much random Snoopy shit that is like specifically fall themed.
My lock screen is fall Snoopy.
That literally was my screensaver last year. This time last year. No, I'm not kidding. And then one of my friends was like, why is that your screensaver? That is so weird. And I was like, joy, because
Rude.
joy.
I'm gonna shout out both my
Um,
parents in this episode. I already shouted out my dad. Hey dad, he doesn't listen to this, but love you anyway, dad. My mom does
Laura,
listen to
shout
PlayChat.
out.
Laura, hey.
Hey,
My
girl.
mom is obsessed with Snoopy to the
Literally,
point where
thank
she
God.
has a Snoopy decal on her car.
Oh my
She also
God.
has a Snoopy and Woodstock like plush in her car.
Please.
If you ask my mom this question, she will. I have asked my mom, non-ironically. I'm like, Mom, who is your celebrity crush? And one of her celebrity
Snoopy.
crushes is Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs.
Oh.
But
Sure.
her other one, she literally will say that her celebrity crush is Snoopy. And I love it so much.
Facts.
So
I mean,
I
he's
am
pretty
right now.
cute.
I know.
Hello.
I'm right now trying to convince my mom to get a Snoopy tattoo.
Samantha,
Yeah.
I have a Snoopy obsession story for you.
Do
what is your mom's career path again? Is
my
she
mom works at a bank currently. So she's
Okay.
in like that area.
okay, doesn't matter. Anyways,
Why did you
I
want
was
to know then?
anyways, do I have a Snoopy obsession story for you?
I
My
can't wait.
kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Plant, was obsessed with Snoopy. And if
Really?
you think that your mom is obsessed with Snoopy, this woman, I think she has a Snoopy tattoo. I know she has a Woodstock tattoo, like a
Oh.
little Woodstock. But her whole like thing, you know how classrooms are usually like themed, or like the teacher has like a
Was it
thing.
Snoopy theme?
We had in our classroom literally Snoopy's doghouse. It was the size of probably like half of my bed was like literally a doghouse. And we rotated through who got to spend nap time in the doghouse because it
my
was just
God.
full of Peanuts stuffed animals.
I love that.
And so like if you were good, you would get on the Snoopy's doghouse list and you would like cycle through. And then if you weren't, it was like no doghouse for you. Sorry.
I love that because usually like go to the doghouse means like a bad thing.
It's a bad thing, but we were like, I need to get into the fucking doghouse. Like it was literally the end all be all of kindergarten. It was like
I love that.
such a big deal. And we got to like, that's where we kept like our own toys that we had brought like for nap time or whatever. Like she was obsessed. She was
So
obsessed.
all of this is to say that I love It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
Yes.
It is my favorite Peanuts special, and I will be watching it on loop until Halloween. Thank you
should
very
consider
much.
watching it if you are listening.
Absolutely. Leave your
Okay.
thoughts on this on the It's a Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown or the Peanuts franchise in the comments.
As a whole.
Absolutely.
Okay. So for my segment,
Right.
I was voted to do a ranking.
Ooh.
At first, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little disappointed. I was like, because I just finished The Haunting of Hill House literally like 3 hours ago, and I really wanted to talk about it for the Halloween special, but I was voted to do a ranking. Wait, can you guys hear my roommates? I'm so sorry. I just want to make sure.
No, it's all right. You're good.
Okay, good. So I wanted to talk about The Haunting of Hill House, but I was voted to do a ranking, and I was like, what am I going to talk about? And then I thought about our list. And to be clear, I feel like I need to define the difference between a top 5 and a ranking.
Yes.
A top 5 is like we pick an overall category, like Sam did Netflix originals, and picks like just her top 5. A ranking is picking an existing collection of things. So for example, the Taylor Swift albums,
Yes.
and ranking those like in order of our preference. So I was like, what am I going to rank? And then I was thinking about Halloween. I was thinking about Halloween shows and movies and whatever. And then I was thinking about Halloween specials. Go check out our list of Halloween specials on our Instagram. But I was thinking specifically about The Office Halloween episodes. And so I have ranked all of the Office Halloween episodes.
Ooh.
Guys, I did my homework.
Did you watch every single one?
There's a rubric.
Oh. Okay, wait. Before we go any further, Moise, have you seen The Office?
Okay. Not the whole thing.
This is so embarrassing for you. I'm sorry.
It's okay. No, it's fine. Please.
It's okay. No, it's not embarrassing.
I've seen you know, like when you go over to your friend's house who really likes The Office and they're like constantly watching it. Like
Well,
I've
that's
definitely
us.
like
Moise,
So-
that would be if
ended
you
up
came to
watching
my
like
apartment.
10
That's
episodes
us.
in a row. But like, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like
Yes,
once you
I know
sit
what
down
you
to
mean.
start watching it, you do. I've just never gone out of my way to watch the whole thing from
Okay,
start to finish.
fair
Sure.
enough. Fair enough.
But I know
Literally
like a lot of the
couldn't-
plot points and stuff, like you're not going to spoil anything.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Literally couldn't relate to that less, but it's totally fine. Okay, here is the ranking. So this is how I ranked it. There are 3 criteria, and they are all ranked out of 5, which means the total score that an episode could get is 15.
Okay.
So I rated the A plot of the episode from like out of 5. I rated the B plots of the episode out of 5, and then I rated like the Halloween-ness, like how
Spooky.
embracing it is of the Halloween season out of 5. So the
Word,
total
word.
amount they could get is a 15. Should I go from bottom to top?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. So technically there's 6 episodes here, but I have a tie in the middle. So we're starting at 5th place. So 5th place would not get a yogurt lid in the Office Olympics. So sorry. This is not going to come as a shock to anyone, is season 9, episode 5, Here Comes Trouble. Season 9 and season
It's
8,
so bad.
they're literally embarrassing. They are embarrassing for the franchise. They're embarrassing for the fandom. I don't like to talk about it. But basically, the A plot of season 9, episode 5, Here Comes Trouble, is that Andy invites his college a cappella group to perform at the office Halloween party and is upset that they won't like feature him because Stephen Colbert plays Broccoli Rob, who's his like
Broccoli
frenemy from college. So that's basically the A plot. I gave it a 3 out of 5. Whatever. The B plot, Jim and Pam are in their fights. They're in a rocky
Oh.
patch. They're fighting about Jim's new job prospects.
Right.
Another B plot is that Dwight finds an anti-anxiety pill that is Nellie's, but she doesn't want him to find out about it, so she tries to hide it. And then another B plot is also centered around Nellie, which is that she dresses up as Toby, and Toby like takes that as a sign of flirtation
Right.
and like tries to like win her over and gets her flowers, and then she rejects him. B plots 1 out of 5. That is a terrible episode of The Office.
I think there are way
Um,
too many B plots in my opinion.
Yes,
Jim and Pam are fighting. I don't even want to watch
bad.
it.
Literally negative points.
I don't love this episode's depiction of anxiety and mental illness
Yes.
in general.
Yes.
Especially considering this episode came out in 2012.
Yeah.
Like there are some
Always with
episodes,
Dwight.
there are some episodes I think in the earlier seasons where if they came out now they like wouldn't be okay, but they're like
Mhm.
those came out like years ago.
Right.
This one didn't even come out 10 years ago.
That long ago. No.
So
So,
I feel
yeah.
like with Dwight a lot they do that where they make him say the sketchy stuff
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know, but that's
B
my
plots
opinions
bad.
on the B
1
plots.
out of 5. The Halloweenness 3 out of 5. There is a Halloween party, which you would be surprised as we go through this list. There's less Office Halloween parties than you might expect in the Office Halloween episode. So like there is a Halloween party and
Right.
like there are costumes. So like whatever. But this episode rounds out at a 7 out of 15. That's so unfortunate for them. Moving on. 4th place we have tied.
Okay.
But then I just chose which one was my favorite and put it above. So I'm talking about the one that is my least favorite of the 4ths
Okay.
first. So season 8, episode 5, Spooked. Are we shocked? No, we're not. The A plot of this episode is that Andy, who is the regional manager at this point, tries to make the office Halloween party better to impress Robert California, James Spader's son,
Right.
his like 10-year-old son. And he enlists the help of the since disbanded party planning committee, Angela and Phyllis and Aaron.
Right.
And this is when they get Gabe to play his unsettling movie that he made because
Oh,
he is a connoisseur of cinema of the unsettling.
soundscapes.
Yeah. The A plot 3 out of 5. Like it has the party planning committee for some old nostalgia.
Right.
There's like Robert California is sometimes funny, so like whatever. 3 out of 5.
I am a big Robert
B-plots,
California fan. I
Yeah,
really am.
he's, like,
I love
honestly,
James Spader.
I think he's better to replace, like James Spader is better to replace Steve Carell than Will Ferrell, in my opinion. That's
Oh,
probably
absolutely.
a much longer conversation than we have time for right now, though. The B plots are that Toby takes away Dwight's costume weapons and he gets pissed about it. And Jim and Pam again are arguing about whether or not ghosts are real. 2 out of 5. Boring. Predictable, been done. Halloweenness, I give it a 3 out of 5. Again, Halloween party, again, like the ghosts thing, costumes, like, okay, sure. 3 out of 5. So this episode rounds out at an 8 out of 15. Also at an 8 out of 15, which ties it again with Spooked season 8, is this episode, which you will be shocked maybe to find out is a Halloween episode. Season 5, episode 6, Employee Transfer, is a Halloween episode.
I hate that episode.
The A plot of this episode, you will know what I'm talking about once I explain it, is that Michael and Daryl have to drive Holly back to New Hampshire because Holly's getting transferred back to the Nashua branch. Shout out New Hampshire.
Shout out Nashua, New Hampshire.
And on the way there, Michael and Holly break up because they just don't see how their relationship is going to work.
Long distance.
3 out of 5, I guess, for the A plot, because like it advances the plot. Like it is a big plot point in this episode.
Love
And
Daryl.
I really love, yes, I love any situation where the characters who don't normally interact. I think it's really interesting. And something that I learned from Office Ladies, the podcast, is that in the later seasons, they started writing episodes by just pulling like index cards with 2 random characters on them, and they would be like, how do we form a plot around this? So like Michael and Daryl in a scene together is really funny, like for that extended amount of time. The B plots of this episode are that Pam is the only one dressed up for like Halloween at corporate, which is so awkward. She's
dressed as Charlie Chaplin.
She's dressed as Charlie Chaplin, and she's the only person who shows up to work at corporate in New York dressed in a Halloween costume, and it is so awkward. But that's only the cold open. Like that's the opening, and that is the only reference to Halloween in the whole episode.
You're kidding.
I'm not even kidding, because
That's
then
whack.
the rest of the B plot is that this is when Pam schemes with Jim's brothers, Tom and Pete, to try to prank Jim, and it totally fails. And then Dwight and Andy fake interview each other and compete about the Ivy Leagues. And so the B plots, honestly, I gave the B plots, like separated from the Halloweenness category, I gave the B plots a 4 out of 5,
Right.
because like these are good, like classic Office B plots. Like there's funny dynamics being explored here. So I gave them a 4 out of 5. However, that's counteracted with the Halloweenness 1 out of 5. There's like one scene that's about Halloween. So like that's kind of disappointing. So that gets an 8 out of 5. Here we go, 3. So the bronze
Yay.
medal for the Office Halloween Olympics, if you will. Also, you might be shocked that this is a Halloween episode, is season 6, episode 8, Koi Pond.
That's a Halloween episode?
It's a Halloween episode. Sydney's hand just shot over her mouth. The A plot of this episode is that Michael and Jim go on a sales call or like a corporate meeting or something. And at this office complex, Michael falls into the office koi pond and kills one of the fish. And then everybody makes fun of him until they get the security footage and realize that Jim could have saved him and just didn't help.
And leaned away.
He leans away in this funny dance move that they all start recreating. Honestly, 5 out of 5 A plot. Doesn't have anything
Great
to do with
plot.
Halloween, but such a funny episode. Such a funny episode. The B plot is also great in this episode. The B plot of this episode is that Andy and Pam, who is like visibly pregnant, late pregnant at this point, go on a sales call together because they are the 2 lowest selling salesmen in the branch. And they go on a sales call, and their strategy to sell more is to pretend that it is Andy's baby and that they're a family team of salesmen. And they sell more paper. 4 out of 5. That's a good B plot. That is
Really
a
good B
funny
plot.
B plot.
Yeah.
However, Halloweenness of this episode, 0 out of 5. 0 out of 5. So I was like, why is this a Halloween episode? I looked it up. I was like, what the heck? Like, what about this is a Halloween episode? This is what it is. There was apparently this like huge, like big Halloween scene. Like the whole cold open was like this extended Halloween scene that was a like Halloween. They do this fundraiser where they set up like a maze, like a paper maze in the warehouse. So, like they use the boxes and they try to like bring kids in. But they don't air it anymore because of something super problematic that Steve Carell did in in the improv cold open. So NBC doesn't air it anymore. So the Halloween is just gone from the episode.
What did he
So,
do? Enough to take out an
um,
entire first section of an episode. I mean,
yes, there's like some kind of allusion towards suicide that they ended up cutting from the episode.
makes sense.
So 0 out of 5 for Halloweenness. But that brings us to number 2. So
Number
again,
2.
that episode rounded out at a 9 out of 15. Number 2, the silver medal, goes to season 2, episode 5, Halloween, the first Halloween episode that the franchise gives us. The A plot of this episode is that Michael has had like a month to fire or to let go one of the employees in the Dunder Mifflin branch because they are downsizing. They don't have enough money. And he puts it off until the last day, which is October 31st, Halloween. So he has to fire somebody on Halloween, on the day of the Halloween party. And it's this mess. And he like is so stressed about it. Funny A plot. I give it a 4 out of 5. It's still early The Office and early Michael, so there's moments where you're like, meh. So 4 out of 5, but it's funny. It's a good plot. The B plot, such a good B plot. The B plot is that Jim and Pam, not dating yet, still in their weird flirty phase, Jim and Pam post Dwight's resume on the internet. And they post about his martial arts skills on the internet. And companies start randomly reaching out to him for interviews. And he like bombs all of these interviews and he's ridiculous, but then he gets an offer and he like he tries to leverage the offer with Michael to get more money. And then Michael's like, perfect, I'll fire you because you got a new job. But he turns down that job. It's at Cumberland Mills to stay with Dunder Mifflin. And then Pam suggests that Jim apply to the job at Cumberland Mills, which really upsets him because he feels like Pam wouldn't care if he wasn't around anymore. This B plot, 5 out of 5. This
Very
is a
good.
classic. This is like classic The Office. We have a
prank on
Jim and Pam
Dwight.
prank on Dwight, Jim and Pam relationship dynamic. Like
Right.
there's Michael and Dwight like going on in this B plot. So like 5 out of 5 on this B plot. The Halloweenness of this episode is a 4 out of 5 for me. They're all in costume the whole episode, which makes it even better. This is 3 Hole Punch Jim episode. This is the episode where Michael has the head of himself, the
Yes.
second head. So he's 2-head Michael. Just a great episode, great Halloweenness. And at the end, we get this really adorable scene of Steve Carell or Michael Scott. Like he's all upset because he's like everybody else is like out partying for Halloween and he just fired somebody, so they're all pissed at him. And then these trick-or-treaters show up at his door and it's like pure Michael. He's like happy to see them there.
He gives them so much candy.
He gives them so much candy.
He's so
and there's
excited
like
about their
a
costumes.
lion and he's like, scary.
It's so cute.
It's so cute. But this brings us to our gold medal winning Halloween episode of The Office, which is season 7, episode 6, costume contest.
Oh,
The
yeah.
A plot of this episode is that Sabre, which is the company that ends up buying Dunder Mifflin later on in the show, Sabre is hosting a costume contest for the employees to boost like company morale with a prize of a coupon book worth $15,000. And so all of the employees of Dunder Mifflin are freaking out about this crazy prize money deal. And Oscar is like, this is not a good deal. It's like a coupon book that can save you up to $15,000. It's not like you're getting $15,000 in a coupon book. So he's like, this is ridiculous. But they all like compete like crazy to have the most over the top costumes. And it all comes to a head at this giant fashion show of costumes that they have later in the episode. And they've really gone all out. Some of them are changing throughout the day. Like it's intense. And then they all end up voting. And Oscar ends up winning because they all kind of vote like to like fuck with the scale, and they like fuck up and he ends up winning.
It's a great plot.
So it's a great plot. The B plot of that episode is also a really good B plot. So I gave the A plot a 5 out of 5. The B plot is that Danny Cordray, Dunder Mifflin has hired a new employee named Danny Cordray. And Danny Cordray is around, and Jim and Pam, like, Jim finds out that Pam and Danny had like gone on a few dates in the past, like between Roy and Jim, Danny and Pam had gone on a few dates, and then Danny never called her back, and she like feels super awkward about it, and she never found out why. And then all the while this is happening, Pam is like trying to convince Jim to wear the complimentary costume. She is dressed as Olive Oil, and she really wants him to dress as Popeye. And he won't do it because he hates Halloween. This is a running theme through the show. He won't like dress up. And so this is all going on at the same time, and then it comes together in this really cringy scene where Danny Cordray admits that he never called Pam back because she's dorky. And she gets like super offended, but she looks really funny because she's literally dressed as a cartoon character as he tells her that she's dorky. And so to make her feel better, Jim comes to the office dressed as Popeye with their baby in costume.
So
4 out of 5.
cute.
4 out of 5 B plot. Really good B plot. The Halloweenness, 5 out of 5. They're on it with they have the costume contest. The costumes are like so well done.
There's multiple
the Halloween
Lady
party is
Gaga
going on.
costumes.
There's multiple Lady Gagas. Like there's multiple Jokers. Like there's a lot going on here.
Lots of costumes.
So it's a really good episode, and it gets a 14 out of 15 for me. So that is my official ranking.
Very nice.
Amazing. Thank you,
Office
Emma.
Halloween episodes.
That was very well
Amazing.
researched, I must admit. I got like,
Thank you.
I understand your rankings completely, even though
I'm so glad.
I've definitely seen the, what is it? The one where he falls into the koi pond, but I think
Yes.
I had no idea that was a Halloween episode.
Me
Yeah.
either.
So thank you for enlightening me.
You're so welcome. That's what I'm here for.
All right.
All right.
I know, Emma, you did some spooky research for us.
I did some more
today,
research.
and it's going to help inspire our first ever play chat activity.
It
Ooh.
is. Buckle your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen. Things are about to get spooky.
So for our activity today, we have decided that we are going to spend, this is why we brought on Moise today.
Yes,
Moise
if you're
is a
wondering why Moise
playwright.
is here, this is why.
We decided we wanted to do a fun little playwriting game/exercise for our Halloween special. So our lovely producer, Miss Syndey Steger, who has been on our call this whole time, yay Sydney.
Or should I
She
say boo?
Do not boo at Sydney.
I meant boo in like a spooky way
what
because
you
it rhymes with
meant.
woo.
oh my god. Anyway, so Sydney has been compiling some Halloween guidelines for us, and we are going to set a timer for 10 minutes, and me, Emma, and Moise are all going to write our very own spooky little play
Spooky
in
play.
10
Ghost
minutes.
story.
Spooky little ghost story.
Ooh.
So Emma, why don't you give us some inspiration with some of the
Okay.
research you did?
Perfect. So, like I said, I was watching The Haunting of Hill House most recently, and I'm not always into spooky things. I am not a huge horror fan, but this time of year always gets me interested in like spook culture, if you will, the Halloween lore. And so for prepping for our 10-minute ghost story writing, I did a little bit of research about the origin of horror and the origin of ghost stories. So I just took some quick notes, and we're just gonna like do a crash course on horror throughout history. So basically at the root of like ghost stories and horror and like scary stories have like literally always existed. They have always existed. They started as like folklore in the same way that like fairy tales are passed down. People would pass down like scary stories and ghost stories. So they have literally always been around. And most people like it, that is accredited to the fact that what is kind of at the root of all of them, at the center of all of them, is this like very timeless human fear of death and like the unknown. So obviously we humans kind of have a fascination with this, and so one of the ways that this has come through in history is through like horror and ghost stories. So again, they have always been around. If you kind of, you know, look to like the Western roots of things, you can go back to like, there are ghost stories in like Greek mythology culture. So like the myth of Clytemnestra is essentially a ghost story. So there's myths and fables that kind of are all like haunting stories. But most kind of like horror films and kind of that genre of like theater and film are like adaptations of literature, and come from like the Gothic era of literature, which is like brought us like Frankenstein and Dracula, and is like coined by a very specific aesthetic that we see in Halloween today, of like fog and like big eerie castles, and like, you know, dark nights and like haunted horses and stuff like that, kind of like dark Gothic like aesthetic. But I thought that it would be interesting just to like pop in this little tidbit too, which is that like in Western culture and in specifically in America, we associate ghost stories primarily with this month, October, and Halloween. But interestingly enough, the most like debatably, but you know, probably the most famous ghost story of all time is A Christmas Carol, which is
Right.
a Christmas story.
Christmas story.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. But just to kind of like run through the history of horror films and like horror in this genre. The early years of horror film were, again, based on adaptations of literature. So like we have Frankenstein, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And this was in like the early 20s, like, you know, like silent film era, and black and white. And then we moved into what they call the golden age of horror, with silent films like Nosferatu, which was in 1922. And then later, once sound was added, notably The Mummy in 1932. And the 30s also marked the first time that the word horror was used to describe the genre. So this is like the coining of the genre. Yeah. Later, we move into the atomic years, which bring us more subgenres. So like horror starts to kind of like branch out into other things. So like we have like the first psychological thrillers, and then we have like slasher movies start to come out, and this is where we highlight like Alfred Hitchcock, obviously huge director in the horror industry. So again, but he's kind of a branch of like the root of it. Then we move into the 40s and 50s, and this is still kind of in the atomic era, but the hallmark of like the 40s and 50s was that everything was being based on or directly in response to World War II. So this is when we start to see horror become less supernatural. So less like before, a lot of horror was based in like supernatural or fantasy or like religion, like less tangible things.
Definitely.
And horror starts to become more focused on like failed technology or like nuclear mutation, like things like that could be a direct response to like the technology of the time in the wartime.
Yes.
So an example of that is Godzilla. Then they moved into the gimmicky years that they call it, which is the 50s and 60s. The 50s and 60s, when like movie theaters and drive-ins became like a central activity to American culture. And so horror films became really focused on becoming like an entirely immersive experience. So like during this time, if you went to see a horror movie in a theater, there would be like paid actors in the theater that would like scream to scare you while you were watching it, or like faint, like to like escalate the moment. Like there would be like kind of like 40 films, like the chairs would buzz and like vibrate at different times during the film to like freak you out more. And then we move into the 70s, which brings some of the most iconic horror work that people probably think of because of Stephen King, of course. So we kind of move out of like wartime horror and back into like supernatural stuff. Of course, again, spearheaded by Stephen King. We have The Exorcist, The Omen, Carrie, The Shining, The Poltergeist, like things like that are more supernatural.
Absolutely.
Then in the 70s and 80s, slasher films became like really the highlight, with kind of like as film technology and like special effects and CGI improved, they could do more with like gore. So this is where we have like Halloween, Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, also pretty iconic horror films, just a different kind. The genre lost steam in the 90s, but in the 90s, there was kind of a new genre, which is like the parody of horror became much more popular than actual horror in the 90s. Like, for example, the most iconic probably is Scream. And then also, interestingly, I found this really interesting. The 90s is kind of when the zombie subgenre of horror started to really become the most popular. And that was like primarily due to video games and like the like widespread use of video games. And then we are at the present day, which we see all sorts of horror, we see all sorts of ghost stories. We see influence from all of these things and all of these subgenres still being made. Like, we have like kind of like The Haunting of Hill House could be considered more of a like classic gothic type of horror storytelling. But then we have like The Walking Dead, which is that like gore, like slasher zombie kind of storytelling. But something that I find really interesting about the direction that horror is heading in right now is similarly to that like wartime atomic years type of thing, is horror's kind of moving into like a socio-political commentary direction with like Jordan Peele with like Us, Get Out, which is really interesting. And I also thought it was interesting to highlight how many more women are coming into the industry, because horror, particularly in film, was one of the most exclusionary genres for working women, as writers, as directors, and also like the horror genre tends to perpetuate a lot of misogynistic stereotypes of women, and so they're kind of coming more into the field. And then of course, like I mentioned, the 2 TV shows earlier, something that we have now that they obviously didn't have then is like horror shows allow for these like longer, or shows in general allow for these like longer explorations of larger, like fuller worlds. So horror stories are becoming like more and more advanced in kind of like their arcs, and what is possible, especially as technology like advances. So that's a crash course.
Isn't the new Candyman movie directed or written by a woman? I think. I don't remember her name.
Let's see.
I think Jordan Peele is producing it, but I think either directing or writing.
We can fact check this so fast. Let's see.
I've also noticed that
I'm researching it right now.
It's directed by a woman of color, in fact, Nia DaCosta.
Yeah.
Love that.
Which is very cool.
Yeah.
But I've also noticed in horror movies as of late, there's a lot of reboots. Like there have been a lot of Exorcist reboots.
Yeah.
I mean, Halloween has always been a series, and so is The Exorcist. But I mean, Candyman was a movie back in the 70s.
Yeah.
And so like I think it's very interesting that like a lot of those things are coming back to pass. And then there was that time when there was like Human Centipede was like the pinnacle of horror. Yeah, like it either goes really crazy or like it's like kind of
Saw,
just
all of those kind of movies.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. Oh, sorry, Sam.
Go ahead. Mine's for an end of conversation thing.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say it's interesting that you bring up like reboots, because we've talked about like reboots and also like adaptations a lot on the podcast, because like, like in the same way that you can track fairy tales throughout history, and like through different cultures, and how like we all kind of have the same stories, that just like the minor details change like culture to culture or like throughout time. Like it's similar, I think, with like horror and ghost stories. Like But that also comes with kind of like the structure of film, I guess, sometimes. Like
Definitely.
there is a structure, but also like reboots, and even like there's also like it, and then it got like chapter 2. Like
Yeah.
they're like
Right.
expansions of like these worlds and these stories.
For sure.
But yeah, I think that's interesting.
Well,
Yeah.
before we move on to our little ghost stories, just because we're talking about horror movies, what's everyone's favorite horror movie? I can go first. My
Yeah,
favorite
go
horror movie.
first.
I'm not a big fan of the gory movies, which is funny because I watched The Walking Dead like all through middle school. I was obsessed with it.
Mhm.
But when it comes to horror movies, I'm not a huge fan of gore. And the
Sure.
ones that tend to scare me the most are actually ones about ghosts. Because, and every time
Yeah.
I say this, I like to put it out into the world that I don't
Sure.
want proof if ghosts exist. I would like to never know for sure.
Fair.
But the ones that bug me the most are ghost movies because I'm like, what if they are real? So my favorite
Mhm.
horror movie is The Conjuring, the first one.
Oh,
Oh,
It is so
classic.
good.
Fun.
I think especially the first one and the second one, Conjuring 1 and 2, are such a good base for the rest of the franchise. And I haven't seen the entire franchise,
Mhm.
but I just love The Conjuring. It's the perfect
Yeah.
amount of like jump scares and then just like scary ghosts, and there's like a whole family dynamic, and it has some like fun young faces in it, like Joey
Mhm.
King's in that movie.
Joey King's in
the girl
everything.
the girl that played Renesmee in Twilight is in
Oh my
that
God,
movie.
True.
And then just some other great faces. So
Mhm.
my favorite horror movie is The Conjuring.
Yeah, I mean, recently I feel like for like the longest time, my favorite horror movie was what is it? Would you consider 40 Days a horror movie? I feel like it is.
I think so. Yeah.
Because like I had seen like when I was younger, I watched like Night of the Living Dead, the
Right.
black and
Mhm.
white movie, and like that was my first introduction to it. But like seeing zombies run, that made
Oh, scary.
The
It is
Oh,
so
boy.
scary.
that's what like that first scene when like they run into when the guy's like watching his like family memories on his like VHS and the zombie
literally
like
so
bursts
scary.
through the glass doors. I was like,
Yeah.
No.
like that movie was so good at like making the monster scary, and you knew what the monster, you like knew where they were. It was just like that running freaks me the fuck out.
Yeah.
But recently, like after watching Us, like I was
Yeah.
like just blown away by like how it was scary, but like there was such a strong plot to it that like I could
Absolutely.
still like, instead of just being like, oh, this is for cheap scares, like I was invested in the characters and like what was going on top
Yeah.
of like all the gore and the murder and the
For
violence.
sure.
Yeah, I love Jordan Peele's work, so Us and Get Out, but I would say that my favorite horror movie is A Quiet Place, and then subsequently A
Oh.
Quiet Place Part 2.
They're so good.
Because I just think they're so smart, and like similarly to what you were just saying, Moise, like I am invested in the characters and in the dynamics and the relationships above like there's honestly not really that much gore at all.
No.
In those movies, like even the most kind of graphic moments are in some way like edited out, or like you miss it in some way. Siren, sorry. So I love A Quiet Place. I also love anything that has to do with the senses, like an elimination of one of the senses, which brings up for me also Bird Box. I think Bird Box is also brilliant. But if you recall in episode 1 or 2, I talked about moments without dialogue, and I love things that don't have to rely on text, and obviously A Quiet Place is literally full of that. And also I am so drawn to Emily Blunt in that film. Her performance in those films are incredible, and also like a matriarch in a horror film is something that is like so lacking in the industry, and you get that in Us too, and
in The Conjuring as well, actually.
This like, you know, it boils down to this like maternal force of like protecting what is ours, that is like it's so raw in her in that. So I love A Quiet Place. It was a good question, Sam.
Amazing.
Do you know what movie, this is like one thing that like film majors and like film critics and film people love, but I
Yes.
didn't understand whatsoever, other than
What
like,
movie?
oh, it's got pretty The Vitch.
I never
It
saw
came out
it.
like 3 years ago. It's okay, you don't have to. It was.
Moise is like, don't watch it.
It's really not worth your time because, like, okay, it's suspenseful. I get it. There's like a
Sure.
lot of long panning shots of like spooky
Okay.
forest with like stuff going on in the shadows.
Mhm.
But I'm like, when is anything gonna happen? Like,
Not
they
enough
spent so
action,
much
yeah.
time on the suspense that like
You missed
by
the
the time
plot.
by the time the witch got there, it was like there's only 30 minutes left in the movie. I'm like, I've been
Oh,
sitting here
yeah.
for an hour and a half.
Mhm.
Like, y'all really gotta like at least make me scared of it, because I was just like, oh, she's
Yeah.
gonna eat
You're
the
just
kid,
waiting
or
for
like
it to
she's
show
gonna
up.
murder this family. Like what could happen? I don't know, because
Right.
nothing's happened.
Because no one's
But-
told me what could happen when she
If
gets
that's
here.
like, I've heard very similar things about Cabin in the Woods with Jennifer Lawrence.
Oh,
Yeah.
I haven't
It's
seen
like-
that one either.
Kind of just like, when's something gonna happen?
Cabin in the Woods is interesting though, because like it has like a really crazy plot twist
Yeah.
halfway through. I would suggest it. Like, I think it's really clever. I probably wouldn't watch it again, but I don't want to
Interesting.
spoil it in case Sam or
Yeah.
Emma or Sydney, if you want to watch it.
One
It's
of my
pretty good.
other-
It's like, it's worth the time.
One of my other
Interesting.
favorites that takes away a sense, because you were talking about that, Emma, is
Yes.
this movie called Hush that I just saw for the first time like
Mhm.
last year. It
I
has
feel like I
Kate
know what you're
Siegel
talking
in it,
about.
who is one of the actresses from Haunting of Hill House.
Bay.
Love her. And it's about this deaf woman who is tormented by this man outside of like her cabin. And
Mhm.
because she's deaf, she can't hear, one, where he is, and then two, how much sound she's making that gives away where she is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so
Ooh.
interesting because for so much of the movie, you're in it from her perspective where you also can't hear any noise. So you
Yeah.
don't know how close
So
he is.
scary.
Like, there are
Oh.
visuals where she's literally like sitting on her couch typing on her computer because she's a writer, and he will just walk directly behind her and she can't hear him. So she doesn't know he's there.
So scary.
It's so scary. So that's another great
So
one
scary.
I recommend. But enough about the horror movies for now, because now
We're
it is
jumping
time.
off.
It is
please.
time for us to write our own horror stories.
It's great.
Mm.
Kangaroo hop right off of this conversation.
Kangaroo hop right to the next conversation.
Yeah.
So, Sydney, what is our criteria?
Okay, I'm very excited about this. I picked things.
Wait, this is a monumentous moment, guys.
This is
Sydney
Sydney's-
Sager's voice.
Her
Premiere.
voice is on the chat for the first time right now.
And I sound really sick too.
Oh,
It's okay.
Sydney.
It's fine.
Christine, edit it in post.
Auto-tune Sydney's voice.
Absolutely.
I picked like the two main things for everyone. So I picked picked two things that everyone will use in their ghost stories. And I'm excited about them because I think that they will be very comparable but conducive to different
Ooh.
things.
Mhm.
So everyone will be writing about a cursed object,
Oh,
and every story needs to have a plot twist in it.
Ooh.
And then I will go
So
through
excited.
everyone's individual
Sure.
assignment.
Thank God.
Sam, you will be doing a reference to a song.
Ooh.
Moise, you'll be doing a non-fictional historic reference.
ooh.
We're all we're all just like, ooh, we sound like ghosts.
Please, literally.
And Emma, you will be doing a mention of all five senses.
Oh,
Okay. Okay.
fits
Sure.
the vibe.
I'm so excited.
All right,
Okay.
everyone.
Good
So,
luck.
Here's what we want. Thank you, Sydney, for our criteria.
Thank you, Sydney.
All right, so we will be spending the next 10 minutes writing a ghost/haunted story. We can we can write this in any format we want. So we can write it as a play. You can write it as just a
As
short
in
story. You
prose,
can write it
yeah.
as a poem, whatever you want to do. We have 10 minutes to write our little ghost stories, and then we'll be coming back and sharing.
yes, I'm so
Okay.
excited.
All right.
Woo! Okay. Count us off. Somebody count us off.
Moise, would you like to do the honors?
Sure. Let me start from 10, 9, 8,
That is such a high number to
six,
start on, Moise.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Okay.
We took 15 minutes.
And we're
I'm
back,
so excited.
everyone. So it turns out we could not write stories in 10
15
minutes. We
minutes.
needed 15 minutes because 10 minutes is a really short
Don't
amount of
come for us.
time.
So ready. So ready.
So we have all at this point written our little stories, our little 10-minute stories. So I shall go first. I decided to just write a little, not a play. I just wrote a little tale, I'll call it. It does not have a title. Sorry, folks. And let's keep in mind, when we hear these things, we literally worked on these for 15 minutes. These are works in progress, first drafts. So be nice about them in the comments, folks. Okay. Are we ready? Perfect. All right, here I go. Just to remind everyone, my prompts were that there had to be a cursed object, a reference to a song, and a plot twist. All right. There's something to be said about living alone. When the lights go out and shadow falls into the crevices, the mind plays tricks. Anna knew this well. When she first moved to Salem, she knew all the folklore. She laughed at the witch jokes. She brushed off the fear. It was a normal town, she told herself. Ghosts weren't real, and witches certainly weren't either. But that didn't ease her mind as she tried to sleep for the first time in her new house. Her only solace was the music box given to her by her mother before she passed, when Anna was just a child, barely 7. While most music boxes can only last for about 10 years before the coils need replacing, Anna's still sounded as soothing as it had the day she unwrapped it from its red box. It played the Clair de Lune, her nightly lullaby, every night since. However, on this night, no matter how she twisted the coil, it didn't play. Instead, the chords scratched against each other to no end. Anna's mind played tricks with this sound, twisting it into screams and wails, and she swore her mother's voice. Outside her window, the trees blew with the wind. The endless twisting coil seemed to make the wind gust harder against her walls, and no matter how she tried, she couldn't shake the idea she was being watched. Her mother always promised to watch over her, and this night, Anna thought she was. She gave up on the box and went to shut the lid. But right as the scratching began to stop, a figure moved in the glass, a reflection of Anna's eyes in the window behind her. When she turned, there was no one there. But when the music box began to play Clair de Lune for the last time, a quiet and tense performance, she saw her mother outside her window. The box seemed to deteriorate in her hands, and as it fell to the floor, Anna's mother whispered to her from across the wind, "You've finally come back to me." Her mother rushed to her, through the wall and the glass, right onto Anna's duvet, still dusty from the morning move. As she heard her mother began to cry, she knew 3 things. The town of Salem was right. She never should have come here, and her mother would never let her leave.
Oh,
Oh, beans.
that ending.
Thank you. There's my little spooky
I
story.
love it.
My little 15-minute spooky story.
It was so okay.
Thank
You were like, we didn't have enough time, but that was like so
I
wrapped
didn't know.
up. That was a full story.
Thank you.
That's like
True.
I'm the
Oh my
same.
gosh.
My story is nowhere near complete. We are stopping very much in the middle of my story, but
You know what? I vibe with that. Let's stop in the middle.
Should I
'Cause,
go
you know what?
next?
It's kind of ominous to stop in the middle. You know?
I'll go.
Yeah, Emma, let's hear
okay,
yours
I'll
next.
go next so that Moise can be the grand finale.
Yes.
Okay. Again, I don't know that I got to all of the things because
It's okay.
listen, I was dropped into the world. The images were really clear. And then it was like,
Wow.
time's up. And I was like, this is so awkward.
Oh no.
So, anyways, I just want to say part of my writing process for this, in case you were wondering, I ran to Spotify, I queued up some ghosty, haunty music, and it worked. Okay. All right.
I love that.
Here we go. So, Christine, roll some ghosty music under this. Set the scene. Here we go. The windy streets of Boston sat empty and stagnant on this cold, near winter night. so empty and silent that the whispers of the leaves could be heard by any daring passerby. On the 13th floor of a tall brown brick apartment building, man and woman clink champagne glasses and look out over the Charles River, steady and still with an unnerving ease. First night in our new home, the woman remarks. Lucy, we will call her. The cool bubbles touch their lips and a sudden wind lifts up the curtain. I didn't expect the city to be so empty, the man says. James. I don't think Boston is hit with tropical storms often, especially not in November. People are huddling up inside, adds Lucy, to which James replies, well, there's no one else I'd rather be with. With their embrace, a large thunderclap strikes the sky and begins to move the river, causing the young lovers to curl into each other deeper. The rain begins to fall, and with hopeful eyes and unsuspecting hearts, they stand in stillness, gazing out until tick, tick, tick. What's that sound? The woman asks. She looks around the kitchen to find a leaky faucet or an open window, neither of which produce the tick, tick, tick. What sound? James replies. The ticking, she says. Tick, tick. I don't hear it, he replies. Tick, tick. A clock? We didn't put up any clocks, but I don't hear it. The thunder claps again and the wind blows up the curtains once again. Tick, tick. It's really starting to bother me. You don't hear it? Tick, tick. As the pair of lovers search the room, knocking on walls and searching under furniture for the mysterious ticking time bomb, the walls begin to rattle with the rain. The wind is now blowing and the wind is now blowing the Charles with an unstoppable force. Tick, tick, tick. I can't stand it anymore. Where is it coming from? She says. I don't know what you're referring to. Tick, tick. The wind is blowing so hard now that the windows are shaking. I think we should move away from the windows. The storm is getting intense, James says as he pulls her out of the room. Hold on, I can't stand this noise. Tick, tick. Wind, thunder, tick, tick. Come on, let's come in. Tick, tick. Thunder, lightning, tick, 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 ding. From across the river, a bell tower has now erected from the ground. Residents of Boston are blinded by a glowing light and a thunderous crash. Every appliance in the house began to flash, beep, rote, and noise, deafening Lucy and James. Period. I
That
don't
was
know
great.
anything more after that.
Period.
I don't know what happens after that.
Emma,
I
you
don't know what
said
happens.
the senses, I'll hit them all. No, I love it.
It just, I was like,
love it.
I was like, the cursed
Clocktober just
object.
emerging
I was like,
from the
they didn't
ground.
put a clock up in the house.
That was great.
There it is.
I love. No, I really. Oh
There
my
it
god,
is.
Emma, you said the
Okay, I'm
senses.
glad.
You hit that
All right.
mark for sure.
Hit us with it, Moise.
All right, Moise. Let's hear it.
Okay.
Period.
I had
it
the same
works.
two prompts for a plot twist and a cursed object. But I was supposed to write a non-fictional. I did not write a non-fictional.
Love
I wrote
that.
a historical
Love
fictional.
that.
Just do it. Trust your
And yeah,
impulses.
so I'll just give it. It's a little like it's not like your stories where
Yeah,
I'll
just go
do
for
it.
it, Moise.
How about that? Okay. He wore a crown on his head, and though he was king, the throne did not fit. His garments rolled up to his sleeves, he painstakingly listened as the evildoers conspired behind his back. He wore a crown on his head, and though he was just, his paranoia grew with each passing day. His hands and feet were cold from the chill of death that filled his court. He wore a crown on his head, but they were not to be ruled, not by this one or any like him. The Yellow King called in his only advisor, the court jester, to discuss what could be done, or rather, what could be prevented. For the king knew that his death could only be delayed. This was enough for him. I feel them watching, the ghosts of the king's past. Do they mean to harm me or merely judge me? That cannot be said, my lord, but think of them as envoys, lovely servants from years past here to help you. You are king, after all. He wore a crown on his head, and it was stained with blood. The jester did not need to know. I find myself worried. Is this kingly business right for me? When will I feel the dagger cutting through my spine? Will it be tonight? No, my lord, now is not your time. I don't believe it ever was. He wore a crown on his head, a perfect cut around the circumference of his head, as he had never took it off. To take it off would be death, a foolish act indeed. The ghost watched him with anticipation, and as the days drudged on, he finally reached his breaking point. He wore a crown on his head, but it should not lay upon his skull. Jester, I've had enough. This cursed thing was never a prize. It was a lie. A lie you told yourself from the start. The badness was not from the king himself, more of a side effect. So you are the court physician now. I am everything, my lord. This court has not been full for decades. Lies. Only the ones you tell yourself. He wore a crown on his head and for 300 years sat, feeding off of his hate, his malice, his anger. He killed them all, slaughtered them for it. For the massive throne, the gilded robes, and the cursed crown. Their ghosts watch as they did in life, death allowing them no quarter. Their job had been fulfilled. The king could not be judged any longer. He wore a crown on his head, and once he ripped its blood-stained gold from his head. His bones turned to dust, the ghost left the court, and the jester was left alone once again. The crown awaits its new king.
Moise, are you kidding? I am so glad that we made the decision for you to go last because we
chilling.
would not
I
follow
have
that.
the chills. The repetition.
The repetition.
Thank you.
Wait, that was incredible.
Oh,
This was so much fun.
let's just say there's a reason I was
Aw,
like, Moise
thank you.
needs to be on the writing episode.
Wow.
I've been kind of turning that one
Lisa.
line, he wore a crown on his head for a long time, and I really never could find anything to like
It's
apply it
so
to.
good.
But this is perfect. This is a perfect
Ooh.
prompt.
I literally bone chilling.
This
Bone
is
Thank you.
perfect, Moise.
This whole day has been
Bone chilling. I am a
Wow.
skeleton and my bones
This was
are
so much
chilled.
fun.
It was. This is
And
great.
it's also so interesting
This
how
was
like
so
the
much
similarities
fun.
and differences between them.
Definitely.
Wow.
Yes,
This was
absolutely.
Truly a joy.
Such a
Spooky.
spooky little episode.
Yeah. I guess
Spooky.
guess that's it.
Yeah.
That's
I guess
That's
that's
a
it for our
Halloween
Halloween
special.
episode, everyone.
Period.
Thank you so much to Moise
Aw.
Tamas for coming on and being our special
And
guest
killing
today.
it.
Everyone give some love
Thank
to
you
Moise.
for having me, guys. It was a great time.
Wow.
Yes.
So lovely.
Oh, of course. Everyone, don't forget to go comment on our icebreaker.
Absolutely.
What is your favorite Halloween costume? Don't forget to check out our polls on Instagram to
Mhm.
vote for
Yes.
next week's segments. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at PlayChat Pod. Check out our Patreon, PlayChat Pod.
Yep,
We
and
got that. Got the
Remember
username
that
everywhere.
if you want to be a special guest like Moise, we have an application form. It's not really an application. Just let us know
Yes.
that you want to come on, which is linked in our Instagram bio.
Wow.
So go check that out.
Thank you so much.
Happy
for
Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Ooh. PlayChat Podcast is written and hosted by Emma Cahoon and Sam Griffin. It is edited by Christine Kattar and produced by Sydney Stager. Our theme song is written by Michael Overko.